How's everybody doing? So, I think it was last week or so, Eric Hussein did a video on how you grip the katana, which he said, you hold it with this right in here. And these fingers kind of float. And he's not wrong about that. That's for sure. So, yeah, you can use your ring finger if you need to, but mainly these fingers just kind of float there, So that's actually how you hold it. These just float. Which, that Eric Hussein, if you see this, good job on that. So this video is not about how you hold the sword, but he said something else in that video about the bullhorn, which he's also correct about. A lot of guys get, one, the bullhorn looks nice on your saya. Don't get me wrong. Beautiful. If it's done right, it looks very, very nice. It's beautiful on it. But people think the bullhorn is going to keep the blade of this katana from going through it. It's not. Really, with the bullhorn, from my research, all the bullhorn at the koiguchi and on the back, on the end of the sai, was to reinforce it. Because Japan's weather changes a lot. Some areas are extremely cold, and then some are very humid. Like Okinawa is humid all the time. It's tropical all the time. It's kind of like Hawaii. So the glue that they always use was rice glue. They still use it. So with the temperature changes, it could wind up splitting your saya. So they put a bullhorn there to reinforce it from it splitting open. Because there are historical records that they had to have their sayas replaced sometimes because of the weather or battle or whatever. They didn't last them all the time. So yeah, that bullhorn will not keep that blade from cutting through it. Like I said, in my research that I found out, it was just there to reinforce the koiguchi. And I've seen videos where guys are, I shimmed this so it's a little tight. Have it right here, they draw it, and they're dropping the whole thing because they just cut their hand. Well, the problem is, this is what they're doing. Okay, you see that? They're pulling up on the sword. That's what they're doing. Don't pull up on the sword. Now this one is a practice sword, so there's no edge on it. I can do that all day with this, and it's not going to cut into it. My other swords, like my Musashi I've had for 16 years, I have never cut through the top of my saya. And the reason being is because when I'm drawing the sword, there's Tomo again, I'm not pulling up on it. See, I don't know if we can get that in there. There's a gap there. Right in here. There's a gap. But if you push up on that, that's why it's going to cut into your saya. The way you draw, well, this is how I was taught. First, when you grab the sword, you come up underneath and you pinch it with your thumb and your forefinger and draw the sword out. Let it run on the mune, the back of the blade. Always run it on the back of the blade. Never pull up. It's always just run on the back. Same when you put it back. You let it run on there. That's why you could have your hand, it's called the crab mouth, right there, and put the sword back and never cut your hand because you have that gap there. And if it's done right, you shouldn't cut your hand. I've never cut my hand yet. Where it gets tricky, because the style that I learn is sometimes we turn it in our obies this way. Well, obviously the blade now is touching the bottom, so it's tricky. You have to learn to, that's when you pull up on the sword, so it's riding on the mune still. But generally, when the sword's like this, for safety reasons, once you pop it, just don't do this. Hear that? That's pulling up on. Don't do that. Just draw it out, straight out. Don't pull up. Don't yank up on it. And if you do that, you're definitely never going to cut into this saya. You never will. It's a little safety tip, because a lot of people, that get a katana, maybe their first time, they don't know, and you get excited. You want to try and cut and whatnot, and you're not paying attention, you grab it, and they just yank it out. Well, when they do that, they pull up on it, and it's writing on the top of that saya. Don't do that, please. And always maintain your koiguchi, however you want to do it. Always maintain this. Constantly, don't get complacent, please. Shout out to Steel Forge and Fire. Joe uses Gorilla Glue. He says it works. I've never tried it. Always put a wood shim in here. If it works, great. The only thing is, when you do shim, or if you even use Gorilla Glue, only put it here and on the top. Never put it on the sides. Okay? That's bad. Because when you put the sword back in, what can happen is, if you shim or put the Gorilla Glue here, it could pop and split your saya. So it's either here, on the bottom, or on the top. I normally do the bottom because the top is really hard to do because it's so narrow. It's not like that wide. So those are the spots you want to do it at. Like I said, don't get complacent about it. Because I did when I was cutting with my unipakai. I don't know if you can see that. That little line right there. Going across right there. Because I got complacent. Didn't realize my saya was getting loose. And when I went to take it out of my obi, I reached over with my right hand to try and take the sword. While I was together, it did this, and this portion, just this portion of the blade, just take your finger and don't press, just run it on your back of your hand. That's as much pressure going across my pinky 6 stitches later. And that was my fault because I didn't realize the saya was getting loose. So always, you don't have to turn upside down and do that. Real gently. See, this one's good. Or if you have an obi belt, another good way to test it, if the tension's still good, put in your obi belt, bend over. Put your hand at the end and then just bend over and see if it drops out in your obi belt. So that's another way you can try it too. But don't sit there and yank, because eventually that's going to fall out and you're just damaging the koiguchi when you do that. So like some people, they take it and they pull it apart. You shouldn't pop it, then do that. Just don't yank it out of there, because when you force it out, you're spreading that wood inside the koiguchi, and that's not good for it. That'll loosen it up too. But I just wanted to put that out there, a little safety tip, for not cutting into your saya, because I've seen some videos and it just right across the palm. you know. That's because they're pulling up on the blade. So just practice that. You know, you can feel it if you're pulling up on the ska real easily. There's play there. Okay. So make sure when you're cutting and you're drawing, don't pull up on the ska. And like I said, we're taught when we grab it, we come underneath, we grab it with 2 fingers, and then we switch our grip. So basically when we draw, it's a pinch like that, then we change into that once we have the sword up. So, because you really don't want a death grip when you're drawing, because if something goes wrong, it could be anything. Your dog could bump you, kids can be coming around. You can release if it's still in your saya. Instead of having a death grip, you know, if it's coming out like this and your kids are coming, real quick. You know, you can just throw it right back in there. Or if they're coming, if something goes wrong, you're going to get cut, you can just let go of it. The best thing to do, if you have to, let it hit the ground. It's not worth it. So, that's all I have for you guys. Hopefully this was helpful. And I will see you all later.